Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and if you've been following our website, you know that earlier this year we attended the 9th Annual Winter Film Awards. So today on the program, we're going to recap some of the awards and talk about some of the films that we reviewed. The closing night gala was quite a show, along with the awards ceremony, and our own Kayla Vera was there to talk to some of the winners of the evening on the red carpet. The winner for Best Web Series went to Jamal Green for his series Chronicles of. Kayla spoke with Jamal and partner Victoria Guthrie on the red carpet.
Here with Jamal Green and Victoria Guthrie, filmmakers and creators of the web series The Chronicles of. Tell us a little more about your web series.
Chronicles of is a web series, an ensemble series about what happens when absolute corruption takes over society. So it's centered around 3 locations, New York, Philadelphia, and a fictional town in New Jersey. And it's about the unraveling of a society when people don't communicate correctly and follow the law.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Where can we find some more information about this series on the web?
Well, that'd be a question for Jamal.
We're on all social media. You can find us on Facebook and on Instagram at Chronicles of, and then on Twitter at Chronicles of a Profiler. So we post daily. There's a lot of clips and trailers and behind-the-scenes photos of everything we've done and what's coming.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for stopping by, and good luck tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The winner for Best Horror Short went to Polybius by Jimmy Kelly. Here's what he had to say about his film.
Hi, Jimmy. Nice to see you. How do you feel about being here tonight?
Oh, I feel pretty good. I think, it's a nice fancy party, and the film festival has been fantastic, and I'm excited to just be here.
So tell us a little more about your film.
So it's based on the urban legend, Polybius, which is the name of the project, about an arcade game that caused all these random side effects, and then the FBI came and took the game away. Our story is about a girl whose brother ends up dying, and she knows it was the game, and she goes to the local sheriff, and they start an investigation.
Wow, very exciting.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, how can we find you on the web?
So you can find me on Facebook. If you look up Jimmy Kelly, Fight On Entertainment is me. If you look up Polybius Short Film, that's the project. And on Instagram, it's Polybius_short_film.
The award for Outstanding Woman Director went to Signe Rose, who came all the way from Iceland. Here's what she had to say about her film, The Ocean's Choice.
Signe, tell us about how you feel being here tonight.
Really good. It's really great, and yeah, I really like it.
And you're here from Iceland.
Yes.
That is amazing. So tell us a little more about your film.
It's based on a true story. It's my mom's story. It happens in Westman Island. It's like an island a little bit outside of Iceland. My mom was a police officer there in '95, and it's a story about some hard cases she had to deal with.
We'll definitely have to watch it. Before I let you go, tell us where we can find some information about you and the film online.
The film is on Vimeo, and you can find me on Facebook and Vimeo.
Signe Rose, thank you very much, and good luck tonight.
Other winners included First Disco for Best Short Film, The Little Goat for Best Animated Film, The Chef for Best Student Film, Minotaur Black Vulpine for Best Music Video, and Best Picture went to Alex's Strip by Irene Zoe Alameda.
Kayla Vera for No Rest for the Weekend here with Irene Alameda.
Hello, great to be here.
Yes, great meeting you. And the name of the feature film that you directed, produced, and wrote is called The Alex's Strip. And what I know is that it's a Spanish film made in India. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, it's a co-production, international co-production, Spanish, American, and Indian co-production that we shot mostly in India and a few days also in Washington, D.C. and in Madrid.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. Tell us a little more about it.
Well, it's a story about the father and daughter who reunite after 10 years. The daughter is 12 years old, And the father takes her to India for a business trip where he used to have a business company. And from there, they have some confrontations, they don't know each other, and then there is a big adventure, an explosion, and things go on from there.
And do you have a website for the film, or where can we find it on social media?
Well, it's just the title of the movie, alexstrip.com, or in Spanish is lacintadealex.com.
In addition to covering the closing night gala, we also had our crack team of No Rest for the Weekend contributors review some of the films in the film festival. One of the films we reviewed is called Daddy Issues. The review comes to us from Andrew Sweatman, the man behind the Art House Garage podcast and blog.
I watched a movie called Daddy Issues, directed by Laura Holliday. This is a coming-of-age drama comedy about a young 20-something stand-up comic named Henrietta. She lives in England. Her life is a mess. She has a very complicated relationship with her father. And at the beginning of the movie, her father dies and leaves to her his company and his home, which are in Los Angeles. So the movie is about her moving to Los Angeles, kind of fish out of water, and trying to basically grow up. She reconnects with some old friends. She went to college in LA, and she has friends Alice and Nolan, and those three end up being kind of the central thrust of the stories, following their stories as they're all kind of growing up from adolescence into sort of adulthood. And it's a very funny movie. I think the best thing about this movie are the performances, specifically the lead. Henrietta is played by an actor named Kimberly Datnow, and she's insanely watchable. She's very funny. She's very charming, even though she's making terrible life decisions. And you're thinking, why are you doing what you're doing? But she really sells it and brings it. The other two actors in the central three are really good as well. The script is very funny. It does drag a little bit, and there's some moments when it loses its sense a little bit of being grounded in reality. It pushes the comedy to just a little bit where it's not believable in a few places. And just logistically, there's a few times that I wasn't clear on how much time was passing, and just some of those kind of plot mechanics were a little bit confusing. But overall, this movie was very crowd-pleasing, very funny, very charming. I hope Kimberly Datnow gets more opportunities from this, because she's a fantastic performer, and this movie is definitely worth a watch.
For more on Andrew, visit his website, arthousegarage.com. William Hammon, who's written multiple reviews for our site, is the creator of the blog I Actually Paid to See This. Here's what he had to say about another feature, Nippon, Nipponia, Fukushima Rhapsody.
Nipponia, Nippon, Fukushima Rhapsody works really well for me for one main reason, and that's because, honestly, it shouldn't. There are so many disparate and, frankly, contradictory elements that all work together that on the surface you wouldn't think any of it would make sense, but in the end, it all somehow does. Director Ryo Seitani, he takes some pretty heavy material here. We're talking about rebuilding and recovery after the Fukushima nuclear disaster 9 years ago. He takes that, but he presents it with this utterly absurd veneer where we can have dark, biting satire about corporations and government in bed with each other, and juxtapose it with high-intensity animation and weird song and dance numbers. For example, the lead character, Kusunoki, he's played by Daisuke Ryu. He's a mid-level bureaucrat, and he's brought into this office to manage a team as part of the recovery effort. But instead of making actual progress in rebuilding Fukushima, they're the PR team, the public relations team, that's tasked with making it seem like they're making progress. And that is some pretty damning stuff. But Seitani's able to hook you in because the entire team is introduced as if the PR stands for Power Rangers. Because every member of the team is saying hello like they're some exaggerated hero from a kids' show. Like, yeah, I'm in charge of the science. Yeah, I'm in charge of the media relations. Ah! It's like, what is going on? Every time things get really shocking or really profound, like, say, a proposal to turn the nuclear disaster waste into an amusement park ride, it's shown as something comically and stupidly cartoonish, And that's to say nothing of the actual cartoons that come along to interrupt whenever Seitani needs to undercut the tension. And then on the flip side, you have Haruka, Kusunoki's daughter-in-law. She's played by Marie DeQuoto. She works in a children's hospital. Now, half the time, she's helping the kids recover by doing these playful, happy-go-lucky songs and dances. And then the rest of the time, there's this kid named Yu who has an imaginary friend who may or may not be real. And that is just bonkers. But the weird thing is, it all comes together in these very poignant ways. Because in the end, this is a film about how you cope with loss, whether it's on a grand scale or in much more personal terms. And again, that shouldn't work, but by the end, you're just amazed by how well it does. And I'll be damned if I didn't love every single moment of it, even though it's completely insane. So, yeah, score one for just going for it and being weird for the sake of weird, because God, was it ever great.
For more of William's reviews, visit his website, actuallypaid.wordpress.com. You'll also find the written reviews for Daddy Issues and Nipponia, Fukushima Rhapsody on our site, NoRestForTheWeekendPodcast.com. The award for Best Actor went to Conor Berry for the film Schemers, which also took home Best Director for David McLean. And here now to talk to us more about Schemers is our own E.J. Argenio.
Jason, pleasure to always be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming back, man. Thanks for schlepping back to Brooklyn.
Oh, it's always a good time.
All the way from Queens, baby.
Not a bad ride. About an hour. A lot of dirty looks. New York.
You'll know more about this stuff if you ever come here, kids.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to talk about Schemers, which was the
film.
Opening night film. I saw it opening night there. Tell us about it. Give us a little recap of it.
Well, Conor Berry plays Davy McLean, who is a semi-amateur soccer player, though, as we both discussed prior to this taping, we're not really quite sure, but he's receiving some sort of stipend and wants to make it a career for himself before an injury, to say the least, forces him to go another route, and he ends up getting into music promotion, kind of on a whim. It seems like he's into music. Music plays a big character in this film. It's used in every scene. It's not just used to, set the scenery, but it's just, like I said, it's a character. And he and his friend, Scott and John, they decide to start a music business, music promotion business, by bringing bands into local venues, which happen to be owned by the local mafia in Dunning. It's
a small Scottish town that we can't pronounce the name of, but it's like a suburb of Scotland.
Yes, and it's kind of way out there, very small, and he brings in bands like Simple Minds and The View and Thin Lizzy, and it's sort of him working through that field and getting bigger and bigger, and sort of working through his own vices in life and sort of finding his own path and following his dreams. And through all this, like in a lot of films, there's a girl that he's in love with, and it's kind of because of this girl that he ends up going this route, but I won't spoil that for you and tell you how that happens. But it's about Conor Berry's portrayal of Davy McLean, who you said, directed the film, and his rise into music promotion in the 1980s.
So this is it's a very 80s type movie. It's set in Scotland, part of Scotland you've never heard of, because it's not Edinburgh or Glasgow,
which they bring up.
Which they do bring up. He's sort of a wily kind of guy, streetwise type of guy. He's a soccer player, injures himself. And then he meets Shona. Shona is the woman's name that this girl that he's trying to impress, and makes up a story about music promotion, and then becomes.
He invites her to the disco.
He invites her to his show, and then winds up, getting into it and becoming like a music promoter almost overnight.
It's kind of like the scrappy way too about when you're finding yourself, how am I going to economically become stable? He thought soccer was his pursuit to, financial comfort, and he has his own addictions on top of it. A bit of a drinker, does some drugs, has a big gambling habit. So that constantly, anytime he finds himself, in the red, he's back in the black, and it's just that constant wave of up and down, and positive and negative, and how he's dealing with this. And he kind of finds his way through music promotion, and he realizes he not only enjoys it, and he does it all for a girl, but he actually has a knack for it, because in that type of industry, it requires you to negotiate and sort of find, corners around.
He's a
sticky
wheeler-dealer type, as
He
we
is.
used to say. And he cons two of his friends into doing it, played by Sean Conner and Grant Robert Keelan, who do a great job as playing, kind of, this Three Stooges act. It feels like they're kind of stumbling through the whole thing. It's a very much like a fake it till you make it situation.
Well, and what's nice is, Davey is kind of the... he's caught in that juxtaposition. There's positive qualities, but they're negative qualities. And then the character of Scott, he's, about 19 years old, the local drug dealer who works around pubs. And
an enterprising young man.
Yeah,
He's an
enterprising
entrepreneur.
young man. Yeah, and he kind of joins this because, as he says, I have no problem making in a couple extra bucks on the side. And then he goes to this guy, John, who... is a friend of theirs, but the rumor has it that he's an up-and-coming DJ. And, John looks at himself on the straight and narrow. He's the type of guy with a mortgage, with a wife. He's kind of building that life for himself. But he becomes enticed by what they have to offer. That's like almost their first scheme, bringing John into the mix. And the three of them together work well and, build up a consistency to bring bands to this small Scottish town and, kind of put it on the map, and they start to take recognition. Without telling you who this band is, there's one point in the film where, they've had a number of acts, and, the agent they're working with, who David McLean plays the voice of on the phone. If you stay through the, credits, you notice that. They get, offered another band who's quite popular still now, and, as they put it, no, it sounds like rubbish.
Right. They so this film it's set in Scotland. And it's not only set in Scotland, but it's very Scottish.
Yes.
There's a Scottish brogue that everybody speaks in, and it's almost it's its own dialect, basically. It's like its own language. So you almost feel like you need an interpreter. I saw the film with subtitles.
I did too, as well.
And they were very useful, even though the subtitles were also sort of just phonetically written in this Scottish brogue. Mm-hmm. When William Hammon reviewed it for us, he actually gave us a little cheat sheet in there. He wrote in a couple of different expressions so that you can kind of wrap your ear around it.
Which was nice. And if you're used to watching films with subtitles, this isn't quite like that. There were a couple of times I found myself earlier on glancing at it, using it as a resource, but you become very comfortable with it early on. And
your ear gets tuned to it.
Your ear gets tuned to it. And because, it still is spoken in English outside of this, Scottish slang.
Right.
If you're following the context of the story, which isn't hard to follow, you'll be able to follow, that dialect along the way, as you would in a film like Trainspotting or Snatch. It has that type of feel where it feels awkward at first, but you get used to it.
This film has a very, Guy Ritchie-esque kind of vibe.
Yep.
Lots of quick cutting, lots of smash cutting, and there is a narration which has got this kind of and this is how I got myself in this mess kind of thing, and then, smash cut to him running down the alley kind of thing.
And there's quick edits. The pacing of this film is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Really
tight.
And it makes it a lot of fun as well because the acting is superb. With every edit, with every cut, with every change in scene, there's almost like a new track, and those subtitles tell you what song it is and who's playing it because, there's always that conventional 80s track you use. If you're going to play David Bowie in a movie, you're not surprised if it's, Starman or Let's Dance. But there were a lot of songs, from The View and other bands that, I hadn't heard of or sounded vaguely familiar.
Or you haven't heard in a while.
In a while,
kind of
yeah.
thing.
Having that as a reference, too, that was just really cool, because the beats were, very... on point from the start, and that's why it worked well. No slow-moving ballads, some very, strong, quick, rock punk songs for the 80s, and just having that as a frame of reference, really helped. It was kind of nice to have.
Yeah, and as you said before, it's not just a backdrop, it's a character in the film, and it's important that they give you this context that these people are operating in the way that, each new gig has to get bigger and better, and it does kind of build to this climax at the end. The performance is all the way around very strong. Connor Berry, Sean Connor, Grant Robert Keelan, and Tara Lee, who plays the girl he's trying to impress. All strong performances. And they also have this very, homespun feel. Yeah. Like, you feel like they went to this town and just found these people there.
It sounds like the town really, contributed for that. There was a nice little note in the end credits, to anyone who came to set and just helped out in any way they can. Your help is more appreciated than you could realize. It was almost like it's a reenactment. It's a film, but it's almost as if this was a home movie of what David Thielen was really living, and he made it as authentic as his memory allows, and was kind of a tribute to his friends, and the end of the film updates you to what they've been up to, and it's kind of nice to see how far they've come.
It's a small town boy coming of age story, but it's inspirational and it's fun. Like a lot of those stories, how many coming of age stories have you seen where you're like, oh god, okay, it's that thing again? But it does kind of give you an otherworldliness because it's set, not in Nebraska, but also because of the language and the fact that they do have. Now I'm thinking a third of the film's budget just went to these needle drops in
probably,
it. Yeah. Because some of these needle drops are pretty expensive for an indie film, but they're well worth it because they make the movie. Without them, if you
and they were very carefully chosen.
Yeah, if you didn't have this soundtrack, there's no film basically, and I think that's probably something that he had to insist upon him because he is a guy in the music business. I'm sure he called in a lot of favors to get get these things on the soundtrack.
I mean, he not only directed it, but he executive produced it. So I like someone who puts their money where their mouth is. What I really enjoyed, he could have altered things based on true events, but when you say based on a true story, you got to keep it accurate. I love how supportive his parents were because you could tell they were blue-collar people, and his dad kind of had a little bit of a, not swindler, but sort of, not to use the same word, but he was a little bit of a schemer himself, Rocket Travel, their business from home, and the way, another way they made money, and when you see the film, you'll understand what I'm speaking about. But I love how they both kind of had his back and supported him. Usually in a lot of films like this, it becomes cliche for the parents to stand in the way.
They almost become an antagonist.
Yeah, and really the antagonist in this was the town's big business run by a mobster who...
That's something we should talk about, too, because what happens is because he's in a small town, there's only a few venues, and they're all owned by the same, sort of shady cat who has... he's got
Des Fergie.
Yes, he's got, his own, sort of henchmen and so forth.
He's small time, but he's big time in this small town.
Right, because he's the big fish in the small pond, so to speak. The scenes that they have with him and the conflict that they have with him is all the price of doing business, and they're trying to make something of themselves, and it's like they have to face this monopoly sort of mentality and try to work around it, and then they try to work with it, and then they almost get their legs broken because of it.
And that's where Davey really hits his major dilemma. He got into this because of a girl, but when he realizes he's good at it and he's having a lot of fun hanging out with his friends and is making a good amount of side change, but nothing to get rich off of quite yet, he wants to keep bringing it up bigger and bigger. He wants to, put on bigger shows. He wants to prove to himself that he's big time in his own right. But the dilemma when you do that is, am I experienced enough? And then when you have to deal with the character like Des, this mobster who's sort of running everything himself, and everything runs through him rather, you need to, figure out, is this trouble really worth it? Is it worth proving to myself that I could do this? Because, without, and not to give it away, but the incident that happens within the first 5 minutes of the film that leads him down this road, if that doesn't happen, his life is completely different. And ironically enough, he meets Shona because she's the nurse at the hospital, and then it's his persistence of her. She's really the first obstacle, and then through his persistence of her, he finds a dream and another obstacle he wants to prove to himself he can overcome.
What I liked about it is that a lot of independent film, I think part of the biggest problem with a lot of it in terms of getting distribution or reaching an audience is that it's not accessible. It's, some of it's like really arty, some of it's not made well, some of it has like this. I don't know what kind of budget they had, but they really
production value is excellent.
Yeah, they made it work for what it was, and I think because they had the cooperation of this town, everything looks so authentic. Like they didn't have to build this town; it was just there.
Well, because Davy's success within the last 30 years, and you'll know what I'm talking about. I mean, you could probably Google David Thielen now and learn the story, but I suggest seeing the film first. You'll have a lot more fun learning about him. But he's probably the the Des Fergie of today. He's probably the big fish in the small pond, because even though his life has moved out and about, they all know him. They knew him back then. Everyone knew him around this town.
Right.
But even now, I mean, we're not even getting to another part of the film. We don't want to give everything away, but he has certain film ambitions that they mention early on and then kind of bring up again towards the end. That's also dictated his life. So we're looking at a character that, just based on interest, pursued a major aspect of the music industry and then certain aspects of the film industry, and now finds himself 30 years later with a career in both.
I mean, he's an individual, and who knows how much this is embellished or embroidered, or I'm sure it's sensationalized to a certain degree because it's a movie and it would be boring otherwise. But I think this film, I don't know what kind of distribution they're getting, but I imagine they will get some distribution at least in the UK.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it wasn't on Amazon Prime or at least Apple. Available for on-demand via Apple in the near future, because, like I said, the film's a lot of fun, and younger audiences will really enjoy it. And, it's hard to understand at first. You can always put on the subtitles feature, the perks of being in the 21st century.
Right.
But in the end, hope. You'll get hope from this film.
It's a great piece, and I'm going to wrap up, but thanks for coming, man. Thanks for talking about this
Jason,
movie.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for making me aware of this film.
Yeah, man, it's great that we get to do this stuff, and we hope to do more of it and bring you guys more indie films to talk about. I'd like to thank Stephanie Finn, who is the Executive Director of Winter Film Awards International Film Festival. I'd like to thank all the people that we get to chat with on closing nights. Special thanks to Bill and Andrew for their contributions, and, of course, thank you, and hopefully we'll have more reviews with you coming up soon.
I'm sure there'll be more in the near future.
Thank you all out there for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including more movie reviews, you can visit our website, norestoftheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. And for Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.